Thank you for joining us at the General's Residence. My name is Heather McGough. I am co-founder of Lean Startup Company with Eric Rees and Melissa Moore. We are really excited to have you guys here with us today. We only do a couple of these private lunches normally, and y'all may have noticed that we're not a conference that has 100 sponsors. We work closely with our sponsors to make sure that the attendees are the priority and that they're really aligning with what you guys need and want. And so today I am excited to hand the mic over to Siobhan McFeeney from Pivotal Labs, who is going to lead our lunch discussion today.
Welcome, and thanks for spending lunch with us. Very quick story, when I came up here, I didn't realize that it was right inside Fort Mason. And my brother actually lived in Fort Mason for 10 years. And so I came back and I'm like, it's the view I used to see every day. So this is a very special place. And thanks for spending some time with us. Maybe a little bit of background on how we're going to spend the next 35, 40 minutes. I want to talk about some sort of themes, what we're seeing in industry and what we're seeing with some of our clients who are really making real acceleration in digital transformation and really focusing on some interesting things. They're not going to be net new to you, but the combination and the way in which they're being done is really changing the pace of transformation for some big clients. So I want to talk about that. And then I'm going to ask each table to do a little bit of work. So hopefully you guys are up for this. And we have a host of folks back here who are going to help facilitate this. So it's really to think about stories based on these three pillars I'm going to introduce, and stories from your group, from your experience, on what is working well or what is not working at all. And then I'd love to share some of those stories within this room. The amount of experience and the amount of sort of history and challenges that are in this room, it'd be a shame if we didn't get some of those to the table in the next sort of half an hour or so. So, transformation, it's not like that's anything new. We've been doing this for centuries, if you think about it. What's probably a little bit unique in 2015 is this is all about technology, whether it's microservices, cloud-based technology. So the core of what transformation is in 2015 is around technology. But one thing that hasn't changed, and it's one of the things, and one of the reasons I joined Pivotal, and one of the things I love about it, is that there's been a constant in all of this, and that constant has been people. So we fundamentally believe that transformation is inherently a human thing. So this is truly, you're talking about changing what people do. You're talking about changing what they work on, how they work together. I mean, you're talking about where they work. And so when you think about transforming, whether it's a small company, whether it's a large, car manufacturing with, 100, 200,000 employees, you're fundamentally asking the people in that organization to come on this journey with you. So what we've seen, we've been doing this for some time at Pivotal, but what we're really seeing is companies that focus on, and these three things I'm going to talk about. So the first one is curiosity. Second of all, inclusion, and I'll get to what really that means in a minute. And the third one, it's really about humility. And when companies focus on those, it's focusing on those in concert that's actually you're seeing these companies accelerate at a pace that other companies are not. So let me take a minute to start on curiosity. It's easy for us to talk about it, and we probably all know that we should do it. But when we see companies who are really driven to ask questions in the organization, really asking everyone to challenge, whether it's like the processes, whether it's the reward systems, whatever those things are, when you have a culture of that, when you have a culture of curiosity, you start to see some really different behaviors come into fore. So we have a large retail manufacturer in the States. They've been on this journey for about a year and a half, and they've begun this sort of push to their teams, especially within IT, to really ask questions, and to ask questions about whether it's security or whether it's governance or SOX compliance or whatever your favorite thing is. And they're a client of Pivotal, obviously, and they've been using the Cloud Foundry platform. And the first time they actually pushed code to the platform, 32 people in the room, and it took 8 hours. One piece of code, one platform. It's a very large company, a lot of complexity. And so after that, the team got together and said, okay, we cannot keep going. I mean, that's not reinvention, right? That's not transformation. So why don't we get the right people in the room? And why don't we ask them, why do you have that process in place? Like, why is security the way it is? And what can we do to automate that? So really what came out of that is the second time they pushed code, 30 minutes, 2 people in the room. So a big part of it is, just talking to people, figuring out why those things that existed for good reason. I mean, those processes existed and were put in place for good reason. Today, though, technology automates much of that. And so asking the question, and it is complicated because you're basically critiquing the work that was done in the past and saying, hey, it was valid then, it's not valid now. And that's someone's work, so how do you do that thoughtfully? So this company is really fostering a culture of curiosity and questioning. And we're seeing that across all parts of the organization. So the second one, and I call it inclusion because I'm trying to avoid any kind of jargon words that you've heard throughout how many iterations of transformation you've probably been through in your own company. And inclusion for me is just simply this. When you think about product first, when you think about innovation around technology, bringing the whole team along straight away. So we have a lot of clients who come to Pivotal and they come and ask, they really want this digital transformation. They want to go on this journey. And I have never met a group that includes anyone outside of the IT organization. So what we're trying to encourage them is bring your business partners, bring your head of legal, bring your CFO, because when you fundamentally change how you build software, when you really become a product organization, there are ripple-on effects to the rest of your company. Every department will end up having some kind of impact. So really inclusion, and we see challenges if the business is not brought along early and if the product organization is not brought along early. I mean, if you think about it, you've got, the business is doing its thing over here. IT is moving very fast. They're innovating, they're experimenting, and there's going to be a clash, and we typically see that. So companies who are including early and often are also winning in this space. And the last thing, and I think the last thing is my single favorite because it is easy to describe, but it is often really hard to execute. And I've, in my own career, had a bit of an issue with this, and I'll share that in a minute. And this last thing is around humility. And it really, the customer first, or working from the customer, right, come from the customer's viewpoint. I think we've all talked about it. We probably have mission statements in our companies about it, probably. And we all probably think we do it. But I actually think it's one of the hardest things to do, to constantly be thinking that every piece of work you're doing, whether it's new product or how you're designing or how you're using microservices, are you really thinking about a customer in a car shop who's buying a car, or a customer in the Home Depot? How will this impact their day? How will this impact their life today? And it is an incredibly complex thing to have a large organization, a medium-sized or a small organization, actually think about the customer first in every single thing they do. Now, I will tell you, I think I have always thought that I thought customer first, and I'm very much obsessed on the customer experience and what that means. But I joined AAA about 11 years ago now. And when I got there, the road service practice was in a little bit of a crisis. You probably all know, and many of you probably own cars that have their own road service inside them, and so why would you need AAA? So we were trying to figure out how do we change and how do we ensure customers stay with us. So we'd done a lot of work, probably too much of it internal, and I joined right around the time we decided that we needed to go faster. So if we get to someone, like if someone calls for road service and we just get there more quickly, of course they'd be thrilled, right? So, I mean, that kind of makes sense. I bought in. I thought that was a great idea. Get there faster when they call me. So we took a journey for the next 2 years, and we changed everything. I mean, we reorientated the company, the processes, technology, compensation. We hired new people, and it was completely orientated around speed to customer. And the board loved it, and it was amazing. I mean, it was a great thing. And Net Promoter Score fell. And we lost 500,000 members that year. And we had to take a moment to say, okay, well, clearly it's them, not us. I mean, obviously we did a great job, so it must have been the customers. So how do you fix that? Like, how do you do that? And I remember the meeting in which we actually solved it. Nobody on the executive team, no leader solved it. We had an analyst in finance just raise their hand and said, who asked for it to be faster? And the reality was nobody had ever asked. We had spent an awful lot of time talking to ourselves. We had done some external market stuff, but we had literally talked to ourselves. So then we went on the second 2-year transformation journey to deliver accuracy, because what they actually wanted was an accurate time of arrival, not the speediest one. So it was, I don't know, maybe $300 million lesson for many, many folks in the AAA organization. And as a result of that, I'm a big fan of learning. I would like to learn much faster than every 2 years, but learning that when you think you're talking about customer first, that stepping back and having that humility of saying, am I sure, or am I overly influencing what the outcome is, what the product design is, what the technology solutions are, or am I really listening to what does it matter, what does it mean for customers, and what does it mean for our customers? So none of this is unique. We've all talked about these things before, right? Thinking of customers first, including more people, and asking questions. But when they're done in concert, and when we see large enterprises, and any enterprise do these in concert, that's where you start to see some magic. And those are the companies that are accelerating digital transformation and actually making it be a thing for their business, not just an IT project, not just a product project. So with that, what I'd love to do is I'd ask your help a little bit. We've got these 3 pillars: curiosity, inclusion, the last one. Thank you, humility. And if we could use those as sort of our frame, because there's so many stories in this room of when you either saw that didn't work, or you have a story about when you actually saw it work amazingly, and to share that in this room. So to pick those frames, just pick one of them. And whether a story that you know that worked really well or something that was really terrible. And if we could take, maybe 10 minutes and spend some time just thinking about what is that story, and then share together 10 minutes after that. Maybe we have three or four tables who might be interested in sort of sharing what your discussion was at your table, anything in your current world job, either related to the 3 pillars or not, or related to something else that you were thinking of. Anyone like to start and get us going?
I would like to share our conversation we had at this table. Thank you very much. I'm from Germany, so our shareholders are the state of Bremen and Mercedes and other companies from the region. So, the initial, let's say, the starting point of our organization was lean manufacturing and lean management in the beginning of the 90s. And we did a lot about this more from the manufacturing and the production point of view. However, it moved to quality management, even approaches how to introduce quality management, knowledge management. So this was a long journey. Even we were developing some lean principles and even thinking, can we apply lean manufacturing principles in hospitals? Well, we went to hospitals and we can say, well, I'm not telling a physician how to cut faster. I have no idea about that. But many principles are applicable in a hospital. So, and finally about this conversation, we got, so what are the main principles when you want to change something, if you want to improve something, especially in a large organization? And finally, we got to the point of people. And I think it's very important that you are thinking about the people themselves. Here we are about startups. If you're in a large organization, it's a completely different audience you are talking to. You have resistance to change. People are afraid of changes. And there I was remembering some 20 years ago in Germany, if you're doing studies, you also have to do some weeks of training in companies. And then I was working in a manufacturing company. So I was at a line. I had to put things on the line and get it back off the line. So after one day I was thinking, well, I learned everything now. I have to move on. Well, but there was a guy, very nice guy, a Greek guy, and he was doing a job of painting parts since 40 years. And he was excited about that. He liked that. And I think this shows how different people are. And if we want to start to change and to do something and we want to improve, then we have to learn how to motivate people. And if you are going to organizations, and especially, I think, a startup, it's a really completely different environment, because I'm also in the moment managing an accelerator in Germany where I have 31 teams working on software. Well, if you're in a large organization, you really need, and I'm very convinced on that, you really need a good person who's managing this project. The project manager is the key, of course. The management need to give you the people and the money. If you don't have this, forget about it from the very beginning. But then I think it's really something, you need to have a project manager which is trusted by the management. At the same time, he needs to be trusted by the people. I think this is really a key for doing a change. And at the very end of the day, everything is very individual.
Good afternoon. I'm Jonna Herman. I'm with Humana. And we have been applying the Lean Startup methodology for almost a year now. Geeta Wilson, our director, brought the idea of taking Lean Startup inside the corporation. And my coworkers that are here today with me, Carol and Kurt, we've been along for the ride since February when we started this last year. And so our story has to do with inclusion as well as humility, because we found out what happens when you don't include the right people at the right times. It can be a very humbling experience that you end up kind of feeling bad about, like a failure, right? So it was a good learning. One of our solutions that we were launching from our team, which we're known internally as the Service Experience of the Future team, we had a solution that was called Ask Humana that would be live on our website where customers could ask questions and get an easy answer. So we had to rely on some internal business partners who are already writing content today for our associates. And we realized when we were having our kickoff meeting that we thought we had a great message, we had a great product, a great solution, they'd want to help us, why not? Well, we hadn't got their buy-in and their inclusion before that meeting, so it felt like it was, we're dictating our solution to you, and you're gonna help us no matter what, right? So that just really, we got some really good feedback. It was very humbling. Realizing that even though the message had gotten out about the work that we were doing at the very top level of our organization, we have to make sure that we're talking to everyone within the organization so that they understand why we're doing what we're doing, and to bring the people in at the right time is critical for our success. And so it was a humbling experience, and we've, I think, taken a different approach with other solutions that we're working on, so it was a great learning for all of us.
Hi, I'm Braxton Davis with the Patent Institute of Training, and I'm a patent attorney, but I like to think of myself as a patent strategist / educator. And I believe that one of the pillars that resonated with us in this table in particular had to do with inclusion and things that I've seen as a patent attorney and strategist, but also things that they can relate to in their day-to-day company works. And one of those things is that if you don't align your inventors and engineers with your corporate strategy, then one, you can end up having patents that aren't of good value to the corporation, but as well as if you don't align them, then you can curtail their curiosity. So I used to work at AT&T as a patent developer, and a large part of that job was educating inventors and engineers on the corporate strategy. So AT&T's, we want to file over here this year and go in this direction, but if that's not communicated properly to the inventors and engineers, they may be working on innovation in another area which the company is not going to file on. And in that case, what it did was curb their curiosity, because it could have been a good idea, but it really wasn't received well by the company. And so one of the things that we do at the Patent Institute is work with companies to make sure that those lines of communication are open. And even beyond that, you have to have good communication with your outside counsel, because as outside counsel is prosecuting your patent applications, if you don't have communication with them, then the patent that you end up with could be completely different than what you end up practicing, or what the widget actually is. And so we just wanted to kind of give insight into what our discussion was, but around inclusion, but that inclusion can also affect curiosity adversely if not done properly.
So thanks so much for helping. Certainly I've learned a bunch. Hopefully we've all gotten a little bit of something out of this. Just before we wrap up, I was thinking, and we were over here talking about it a little bit earlier, is this idea of, I suppose what we're talking about at the essence is just empathy, right? It's empathy at a very personal level and at a company level. And so while I've shared my fabulous failure at AAA, knowing how to actually serve customers, I'll finish with a lesson in empathy that taught me a lot, and that did end up, we got to a place where we learned much more quickly, and the cycles became much shorter. So we've been, AAA is in need of a lot of transformation. It certainly was 10 years ago. So we did this one thing about speed that didn't work out so well. We then went on a journey to sort of as an outcome of that, to help make the road service business efficient. So you can imagine how this is going to turn out, right? So it's going to be efficient. That's our plan. So we do all the best work. We have geography lines reset. We have comp structures changed. We have the best technology you've ever seen. We bring in new products. I mean, it's amazing. And the tow providers would not talk to us. They just wouldn't engage. And I'll be honest, I mean, this is my second go around, and obviously we were talking about my learning cycles, clearly slower than most. So we started wondering, like, why aren't they engaging? And anyway, short story, it was really around, we didn't deeply understand the job they did. And it was simply that. And it's your story of Humana. Did we really understand the business folks who were sitting in that room? Do you really understand the job they do? So I became a tow truck driver over in Ken Betts Towing over in the Oakland Hills for 6 months. Horrible tow truck driver, horrible. Don't ever ring if I'm on, ever. And the whole point of it was to actually just, and this is sort of goes to humility, to really deeply understand what it was to do that job and the changes that we were making, the technology changes, the product changes, like what it actually was going to mean for those folks. So I did Wednesday and Saturday night in Oakland. If anyone lives in Oakland, wonderful place. It didn't look like that, 8, 9 years ago on a Saturday night. And out of that, 2 things happened. First of all, we changed a lot of the decisions or processes or compensation decisions that we were about to make because we really didn't deeply understand what we were asking of this team. And then secondly, they talked to us. It took 6 months to do this job to show that we were serious. And so if I could leave anything with us, and I think we do this at Pivotal every day, is to really put ourselves in a place of, are we being empathetic to each other, to our customers? Are we building a product that actually is going to change their lives? Is it going to make things better? And so if we think of this and you've got wonderful talks ahead of you in the next day and this evening, just keeping in mind that our job is really, we have this privilege of working in these great companies at the end to serve customers and to make their lives just a little bit better. So thanks so much for spending some time with us. It's been a real pleasure, and we'll see you a little bit later.